Well, hey, good day to you. This is Todd. I am a regular dude walking in the Word. Hey, we just finished the book of Philippians. No, not Philippians, I'm sorry, Colossians. And what I like to do is, as I'm teaching, go back and forth between books of the Bible and go from an Old Testament book to a New Testament book. And so before we had started Colossians, we had done Leviticus. And so today we are going to be starting the book of Numbers, okay? As you can see, I have in my background here numbers. They're just license plates, but they're just numbers up there on the background. The book is called Numbers, the book of Numbers, because it has actually two censuses in it. One at the beginning and one partway through, where God has called the people to have a census. So that's why it's called Numbers. But it's really a journey, and there's some really, really interesting things about this book. So I invite you to take part as we study the book of Numbers here. It's not a boring book of just a census or two censuses, but it's a whole gamut of things on their adventure, the Israelites, the people from Israel, on their journey from Egypt to the Promised Land. Okay, and this is a big portion of it. So this is several things. A lot of my studies I get from helps from like J. Vernon McGee, and then all kinds of others, people too, the Communicators Commentary, and so forth. But J. Vernon McGee, he has a radio show also, and he passed away many years ago. But I wanted him to point out several things that he had written about here. That it's interesting to note that the distance from Mount Sinai to Kadesh Barnea was about 150 to 200 miles, a journey that would take normally about 11 days in that time period. The Israelites spent 30 days at Kibroth, and then they spent 40 years on the journey that should have taken 40 days, roughly, to do, because their walking turned into wandering. And they basically wandered around and ended up back in the same place. And then also between the census in the first chapter and the census in the 26th chapter, okay, remember this is the census kind of before the people were dying off, and then after the people were dying off. Remember, men were dying off because of their unbelief, and this takes place in this book, where God said, this generation will not enter the Promised Land because of their unbelief. Okay, and so this is what takes place. That's why you have this census, this first census, and then you have this other census that happens after that generation has died off. Okay, so it says between the census in the first chapter and the census in the 26th chapter, we find a divine history of the wanderings of the Israelites in the wilderness, about 38 years and 10 months, commencing with the first movement of the camp after the tabernacle was reared. A comparison of the two sets of census figures will show that the number was decimated. Okay, so the population actually went down, which was highly unusual because the population with the Israelites was just exploding. It was, when you look at when they first went into Egypt, how many people were there, and then they come out with like 2 million people. The population is exploding, but it actually goes down here. Okay, a comparison of the two sets of census figures will show that the number was decimated. Numbers 146 says there was about 603,000 roughly fighting men. I'm not going to get the exact numbers here. And Numbers 26:51 says there was 601, almost 602,000 men. This represents a total loss of about 1,800 fighting men. So the population of fighting men actually declined during that time period, which God said it would, because He had said that the fighting men will not enter the Promised Land, and that's why they were to wander around for 40 years there. I want to read the first 3 verses of Numbers here today. It says this: The Lord spoke to Moses in the tent of meeting in the desert of Sinai on the first day of the second month of the second year after the Israelites came out of Egypt. He said, Take a census by the whole Israelite community, by their clans and their families, listing every man by name, one by one. You and Aaron are to count according to their divisions all the men in Israel who are 20 years old or more and able to serve their army. Okay? It starts out with the premise of the book is, hey, God wants you to take a census, and it gets very detailed here. How many men, and it doesn't include the women and children. But when you read through the amount of men here, and then you multiply it out, it would be an amazing figure. And we'll get into that in the next few days here. But I wanted to introduce the book of Numbers here today and encourage you to go through our study with us as we look at that, because and some Jewish people have also called it, they've called it many other names besides Numbers, but a book of doubt, and disbelief, because the people of Israel were wandering around, and they constantly were rebelling against God and not believing God and his promises. So this is not only a book of the census, but it's a book of the journey. The Leviticus only was 30 days long, roughly, that took place, but this is 38 years and 10 months long. So a lot of history in this book of Numbers. So join us as we continue our journey through Numbers. Lord's blessing. I'll see you tomorrow.